Hey there, everyone. I'm Josh. I'm the president of the College Republicans United. Thanks for coming tonight. Thanks for coming to support Juanita. So glad to have you here. You know, really means a lot to us to bring her in, to give her her voice out, especially in this day and age where, you know, there's a lot of disinformation going around where, you know, they're silencing people, especially right-wing conservatives or people that have their own issues that have had to deal with the left and their issues. So we wanted to make sure that we here at ASU can bring that, you know, a lot of that to present, and that we wouldn't back down from any kind of threat or anything. So that's why if you see me running around, it's mainly because I know there's already some of the protesters putting their stuff up right now. So making sure it doesn't come in here. So, you know, as you know, if you've known any of these lefties, they tend to do their thing. So we're trying to make sure you guys can listen, hear what Juanita says without any interruption. So sorry about that, but we're going to make this great to hear her side of this, to hear her story and how she's had to deal with, you know, the events that led up to today. So, you know, thanks for having me. My buddy Mike here is going to give us a little info about what he's doing at RU real quick. So.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Mark. I'm the chairman of Republicans United. So basically, if you're not in college, you could join our movement. So basically, this the student version, we're the adult version. But basically, Republicans United is for anyone who's graduating or graduated or who's not in college. And if you're interested in joining a movement that wants to reform the Republican Party and to completely change the entire system, basically, like get rid of those neocons that are currently in power, get rid of the establishment that's in power. And so if you're interested in making some changes in the Republican Party and you want to be part of a movement that's going to be active, you may find us online, republicansunited.org. You may find us on Facebook. We got a Facebook page, like us on Facebook. Also, if you're interested in becoming a member, you may talk to me at the end of the show, and also you can talk to Kevin, the vice chairman of Republicans United, if you're interested in signing up. All right, basically, that's all I got to say, and let me introduce you to a very strong woman, Juanita. Woo.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being asked to come and speak to you. It's always a difficult thing that I have to speak about. And when people see me, they automatically, if they don't know my story, they just see that woman that alleges that Bill Clinton raped her. And so that's what you see when you see on the TV. But I'm so much more than that. When I owned nursing homes, I was also a registered nurse. I'm retired now, but I owned nursing homes for approximately 33 years, and I ran them myself. And I also taught the nurses. I taught the nurses' assistants their classes. And every time before a class started, I would read them a poem. It's only going to take me about 2 minutes, but I think it's a very important poem. When you look at people and you think, you go by their appearance and you don't really go by who they are. This poem was written by an old woman living in a nursing home in England. It was found in her belongings when she died. And it says, "What do you see, nurses? What do you see? What are you thinking when you look at me? A crabby old woman, not very wise, uncertain of habit with faraway eyes, who dribbles her food and makes no reply when you say in a loud voice, 'I do wish you'd try,' who seems not to notice all the things that you do and forever is losing a sock or a shoe, who resisting or not lets you do as you will, with bathing and feeding the long day to fill. Is that what you think? Is that what you see? Open your eyes, nurse. You're not looking at me. I'm a small child with a father and a mother, brothers and sisters who love one another, a young girl of 16 with wings at her feet, dreaming that soon now a lover she'll meet. A bride soon at 20, my heart gives a leap, remembering the vows that I promised to keep. At 25 now, I have children at my feet who I need to build a happy, secure, happy home. A woman of 30, my young now grow so fast, bound to each other with ties that should last. At 40, my young sons have grown and are gone. but my man is beside me to see I don't mourn. At 50, once again, babies play around my knee. Again, we know children, my loved ones and me. Then dark days were upon me, my husband is dead. I look to the future and I shudder with dread. For my young are all rearing children of their own. And I think of the years and the love that I know. But inside this old carcass, a young girl still dwells. And now and again, my battered heart swells. I remember the joys and I remember the pain. And I'm living and loving life all over again. I think of the years, all too few, all too short. Open your eyes, nurses, open and see. Not an empty old woman, look closer, see me. And so many times we judge people by their appearance. And I know many times on Twitter and on Facebook, I've heard people will come and write horrible things to me and they'll say, "You ugly old hag, Bill Clinton would never have done anything to you." And these are just horrible things that people say. But when you look at me, I'd like to tell you who I am. First of all, I'm a proud mother of a wonderful son who became an attorney, a very successful attorney, and fights for children's rights every day. I was a successful nurse and businesswoman. I built my own nursing homes at the age of 30. In 1987, I opened and owned a 50-bed facility for severely handicapped and mentally retarded children. Although I sold these facilities in 2008, they're still in operation and still doing a great service. I was president of my nursing home district. For 10 years, I served on the Arkansas Nursing Home Board. I could go on, but the point is I am more than one day in 1978 when Bill Clinton raped me. This was what all my life was about when this monster came into my life. And I'd like to explain. This is the first page of my book. What in God's name has just happened? I was brutally raped. My lip was throbbing and hurting, as well as other parts of my body. And I was frightened to death. I had this overwhelming feeling that someone might come in to get rid of the body. That's what I felt like, a body. I rushed to the door and I locked it. And I went back to bed and laid down. I didn't want to look in the mirror. I didn't want to see my injuries. I just wanted to lay there and hope that this would all go away and that it was a bad dream. Then I heard a knock at the door. I looked through the peephole and it was Norma. Norma was the lady who had traveled with me to Little Rock. She and I were to be in a nursing seminar. When I opened the door, I saw the look on her face. When she saw me, I started crying all over again. And you think, how did this happen? How did you get into that situation? What was going on that made you get into that situation? In 1978, I was a new nursing home owner. I'd been a nurse, registered nurse for approximately 10 years. And I was running my own nursing home. And some of my friends come to me and they say, we're going down to the Bill Clinton for Governor volunteer meeting tonight. Would you like to go with us? And I thought, that sounds like fun. I believe I'll go do that. I went with them and I thought it was interesting. I'd see his commercials on TV and they were great. I mean, he was so charismatic. So I signed up, and for approximately a month, I would take my young 8-year-old grandson. I'm sorry, I now have a 16-year-old grandson and I get them confused all the time. But I would take my 8-year-old son with me and we would go around in the evenings when I left my office and put up yard signs for Governor Clinton's campaign. And it was exciting for him. He'd carry the hammer and he thought that was the most thrilling thing to do, is to go around and put up yard signs. I did this, like I said, for approximately a month. And then one day, after I had volunteered for about 30 days, I got a call from the state office, and the lady there said, Mr. Clinton's going to be in your area visiting businesses, and we'd like to know if he could come to your nursing home. Well, I said yes immediately. We were so excited, so glad that he was coming to our facility. And the day came, he comes in, and with all of his entourage, and we're all wearing our Clinton for Governor buttons. That's what you see on the front of my book, that picture that we took that day for the newspaper. After we took this picture, Bill Clinton comes over to me and starts talking with me about myself and about my nursing home, and who knows, it's been 40 years, what else. But I thought, you know, I have his ear. I'm going to tell him about the problems that we have in nursing homes. So I began to tell him, you know, we're not doing well in Arkansas with the Medicaid reimbursement rate for nursing homes. We're spending much more than what we're able to get back from Medicare. The cost reimbursement program really needs an overhaul. And he stopped me in my tracks and he said, you know, we need to talk about that. Are you ever in Little Rock? And I said, yeah, my nurse and I will be there in 3 weeks. So he said, well, call my campaign headquarters when you get there and let's set up a time to talk. And I said, great. I'll bring all the forms. I'll show you our billings. I'll show you invoices from all of our costs. And he said, that's great. You bring that. So on April the 24th, 1978, my nurse and I, Norma Rogers, she was my director of nursing, we drove to Little Rock. The next morning when we get up, approximately 8 o'clock in the morning, we were all ready and we called Bill Clinton's campaign headquarters, and a young lady answers the phone and I said, we were supposed to call Mr. Clinton when we got into Little Rock. And she said, oh yes, Mrs. Hickey. She even knew my name. She said, Mr. Clinton said that you might call, and would you please call his apartment? And I thought that was rather strange anyway. I didn't know he had an apartment away from Hillary. I mean, that was just unbeknown then. So anyway, I called his apartment number, and when I do, he answers almost immediately. And I tell him, I say, hi, this is Juanita Hickey. That was my name at the time. I said, this is Juanita Hickey, and Norma and I are down here, and I brought all the information. We have an hour off for lunch, and can we please come over to your headquarters so I can bring this information to you? And he immediately says, you know, I'm not going to be there today. Why don't I just come to your hotel now? And I thought that was great. I wasn't going to have to navigate all the way across Little Rock and not have any lunch and take this information over to him. He said, I'll be over there in a little while. And he said, I'll call your room when I get there and you can come down to the Camelot. It was the old Camelot Hotel in Little Rock. And he said, you can come down to the Camelot coffee shop and we'll talk there. So I turned to Norma and I say, you go on to the meeting. When I'm through in the coffee shop, I told her I was going to meet him in the coffee shop. When I'm through in the coffee shop, I'll come right on to the seminar. So I wait, and in about, I don't know how the time, 20, 30 minutes, there, my phone rings in my room, and it's Bill Clinton. And he said, you know, Juanita, it's so crowded down here. And there's even reporters. He said, can we talk about this in your room? And I'm sure that I was really uneasy at the time. Listen, I was so naive back then. I was 35 years old and a registered nurse and still as naive could be. And I'm sure I also thought, this is the Attorney General. And so I told him, I said, sure, I'll order coffee to the room. So I order coffee to the room, and almost as soon as it's gone, the people are gone that brought the coffee, there's a knock on my door. And I always wondered if he was waiting out in the hallway somewhere so he wouldn't be seen after the people had brought the coffee to my room. I mean, I'm sure, but I have no proof. I walked to the door, and I opened the door, and it's not a bright hallway. It's a dimly lit hallway. And there stands Bill Clinton with sunglasses on, dark sunglasses. And that should have been a tip off to me right there, but like I said, this was the Attorney General. I tell him to come on in, and I start pouring the coffee over where I have my files on this table by a window that looks out onto the Arkansas River. Beautiful view. And I'm on this side of the table, and he's on this side of the table. And I start to pour the coffee. He says, "Come here a minute." So I walk around to his side of the table, and he starts pointing down on the river. There's a little old dilapidated building down there. And he said, and I saw it, didn't have a roof or anything. And he said, "When I become governor, I want to make that, restore that." That was an old 1800 jailhouse. Well, I start to walk back around to the other side of the table, and that's when he grabs me and all things go to hell. And it was vicious. It was awful. I have never been so shocked in all my life at what was happening to me and what that monster did to me. I was in disbelief, complete disbelief. This man was the Attorney General, and he was running for governor. This couldn't be happening. None of it made any sense whatsoever. After the rape was over, I'm sitting up on the side of the bed. I'm crying, and it's not just a whimper. It's a guttural crying. I'm devastated at what had just happened to me. To keep me quiet during the rape, he would bite on my upper lip. I thought he was going to bite my lip off. By the time the rape was over and I was sitting up on the side of the bed, my lip was swollen 3 times the normal size. It was bleeding. And I'm just in a state of shock. He gets up, straightens himself, and looks at me very bewildered, like, "What are you crying about?" But he didn't say that. Instead, he said, "Don't worry, I'm sterile. I had mumps when I was a boy." And I thought, my God, this was in my mind. "You've just raped me, and that's what you had to say?" And then he calmly puts on his sunglasses and walks to the door and motions with his hand. He says, "You better put some ice on that," and walks out the door. And that's what I was reading about. I felt the next person that came through that door was going to be somebody to get rid of the body. I was frightened to death. How in the world did this happen? How could I have been so naive? How did this happen? So I go back and lay down. Norma comes in, and I start crying all over again. Tell her everything. Now this is within 30 to 45 minutes after the rape. I didn't show up for the seminar. I'd completely forgotten about the seminar. I'd forgotten that Norma was even there with me. And she comes to the door, and she comes in, and I tell her all about it. And she says, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I just want to go home." And she goes and gets ice from my mouth. And then I remember on the drive home, she would stop 2 or 3 more times to get ice from my mouth. And we thought, what can we do? People say, "Why didn't you call the police?" There wasn't DNA for rape kits back then. I didn't even know it. And I'm a registered nurse and didn't know that. I wouldn't even have thought of it. But nobody would have believed me. This man was on his way up, and they say, "Why didn't you call the police?" He was the police. It's like when Eric Schneiderman, back in May of 2018, when one of his victims said, after he resigned from sexually assaulting so many women, and they said, "What do you do when your abuser is the highest law enforcement officer in your state?" Bingo, that's where I was, 40 years previously. There's just nothing you can do. And also, the fact that his office regulated my nursing homes. He could have shut me down at a moment's notice. So what do? Of course I told a few people what had happened to me. I had to because of the condition that I was in. It took several days for the bruising to go down. I could cover, the swelling to go down. I could cover the bruising with makeup, but I had to wait until the swelling. So some people knew. So there were 5 people that I told within a day. And then there's the lady that found me 30 minutes afterwards. It was mind-boggling. I don't know how I got through it. And people will ask me sometime, how did you get through that? I have no idea, and still became successful. I don't know if it's because I just put my head down. I went to work to try to forget what I had been through. I don't know. But it was, for the next 2 decades, though, I just went silent. And there were rumors that would go around, and every great now and then a reporter or someone would call, and I would say, no, that's not me. That's not me. My business was going well without his help. And I just had to deal with this the best that I could. I had businesses to run that I owned, and I had a small son to raise. So I just had to put it behind me. And you think, how? But I did. In 1984, 1985, and 1986, my nursing homes won for the best nursing homes in the state of Arkansas. The Department of Human Services gives awards out for the best care, and my nursing homes won those awards 3 years consecutively. And I was proud of what I did. And that's why that poem meant so much to me, and that the proper care in nursing homes, that was always my thing, is taking care of the elderly. In 1991, I was back in Little Rock at another nursing home seminar with the same nurse. She worked for me for 20 years, and she was also my dear friend. And her sister was the assistant director of nursing. And we're inside this meeting room, and all of a sudden someone comes to the door and says, I was Broaddrick then, and says, Juanita Broaddrick is wanted in the hall. So I get up and I go out to the hallway. And the man points, he says, down by the elevator. Someone needs to see you down by the elevator. So I go down around by the elevator. The nurses are following me back about 50 feet behind me. And I go around the corner, and there stands Bill Clinton, 1991, with his 2, he always had his Arkansas State Police with him, and there were 2 guards there standing with him. And he rushes over to me, and he says, I just want to tell you how sorry I am for what I did. And I'm standing there thinking, what in the hell is going on? What in the world? I mean, I hadn't seen this man in all these years. And I was a little frightened because there he stood with this Arkansas State policeman. The nurses stopped back behind me. They saw him there with me, but they stayed away from the situation. I guess until I said, come on over, but no, I didn't. But he kept saying, I'm a family man. I'm a father. I'm a changed man. And I just stood there and looked at this SOB. And I backed up and I said, you go to hell. And by that time I was crying. It was just an overwhelming situation. And when I got back to my friends and my employees, my nurses, I was bellowing. And they said, what was that? And I said, he apologized. He apologized for what he did to me 13 years ago. And we had a lunch break at that time. And you're not, am I on this camera here? They're going to see my teeth if they... I remember Norma saying, do you think he meant it? And I said, I don't know, but I told him to go to hell. You know, I mean, it was, I had such mixed feelings at that moment. Was this man really trying to apologize for what he did to me. 1 week later, he announced for president. So now we all know. And I thought many times about coming out then. It was, but then I saw what happened to Jennifer Flowers. I saw what happened to Paula Jones. Anybody else that came out, Hillary would ruin, no doubt, So I just went back in the woodwork. Then, in 1997, my doorbell rings. And I go to the front door, and there's a man and a woman, a couple, standing out on my front porch. And I walk out on the porch. I didn't fear them because it was a couple. I felt safer, and they were dressed really nice. And they introduced themselves. They said, "Hi, I'm Rick, and this is Beverly Lambert, my wife. And we're here for Paula Jones." And I stopped them immediately, and I said, "Then you might as well turn around and go away." This transcript is on the internet. You can just put Rick and Beverly Lambert. They recorded me, and I had no idea they were recording me. But they were there to ask me to testify for Paula Jones. And I said, "You're an idiot if you think I'm going to come out and after I've stayed silent for so long. There's no way this man's president. He's too powerful. Find somebody else, but don't look to me for it." So they kept trying to persuade me. And like I said, listen, that's just too long ago. That's too painful to remember. I've learned to get past that, and I don't want to go through all that again. Well, about a month later, I got a subpoena to be Jane Doe number 5 in the Paula Jones suit. And I was absolutely angry. I had told these people, "Leave me alone. I've been quiet for a long time. Leave me alone." So I went to my attorney's office to do the deposition, and I lied through my teeth. I told them, no, nothing happened. I'll be darned if I was going to let somebody pull me, you might as well say, out of hiding for their own personal gain. I was angry. I was so angry. And when I walked out of that meeting, that deposition, I thought, there, you heard from me. What do you think about that? Well, then I find out that they sent that recording to Ken Starr. So it didn't stop there. The next person who deposed me was Ken Starr. And when my son, who's an attorney, found out that I was going to be deposed by Ken Starr, he came over to my home. He says, "Mom, I need to talk to you." I said, I'm not telling what happened. I'm past that. I don't want to go through that again. And he came to me and he said, "Mom, Paula Jones was a civil suit. This is federal. This is serious. You have to tell the truth." So for 24 hours, I lamented over that. And then finally went back to my attorney's office with Ken Starr's people and told them what happened. Long, detailed list of what happened. And people say, "Well, Ken Starr discredited her." That's a lie. I had nothing to do with obstruction of justice. I had lied because I didn't want involved in it. I had stayed quiet because I didn't want involved in it. I had never been threatened, or I had never been paid, with the exception of when Hillary threatened me back in 1978. I had never been, there was no collusion with me with being bought off or being threatened. So there was nothing Ken Starr could use. And Ken Starr later said when he went on his book tour that no, he did not discredit me. I just was not, I had no place in his case against Bill Clinton. About this time is when I did the NBC Dateline interview. Lisa Myers had been calling and emailing me for approximately a year. So here comes Ken Starr, And then Lisa calls and she says, you know, it's gonna come out. Ken Starr knows now, so why don't you tell it on your own terms? And that's probably what made me decide to go with Lisa Myers and Dateline. But as we all know, or as I know, I don't know if you know from the media articles or what, but NBC had promised me through Lisa Myers that this would run while the impeachment was going on. And that's the reason that I went ahead and consented to tell my story. They came to my home on January the 20th, 1999, and filmed for about 7 hours. It was the hardest thing. It was extremely difficult. And then they keep saying, well, we're going to run it, but we still need to check out a few more things. And then finally, I had just had it with them. And I told them, just forget it, I don't even want it run anymore. And I got a message from Lisa Myers, and she called, and she said, Juanita, I'm so sorry, but I have good news and I have bad news. And I said, okay. And she said, the good news is you're credible. I said, what's the bad news? She said, the bad news is you're very credible. And when we went into this meeting with Andy Lag and all of these higher-ups in NBC, it frightened the hell out of them. They did not want to be a catalyst for taking and removing Bill Clinton from office. So they quietly held it until after the impeachment was over, and then they played it and aired it the same night as the Grammys. And that's why I'll always have ill feelings against them. They lied to me. But the reason that they finally aired it was, during this stall time, I had a message from Dorothy Rabinowitz of the Wall Street Journal. Am I going too long?
No.
And she called, and I was so fed up with the media, and I said, no, I'm not doing any interviews. I don't want to do anything. And she said, well, I'm going to fly to Arkansas anyway. And I said, Dorothy, this is a little old lady. Now, right now, she's probably 15, 20 years older than me, and I'm 76. She was really, and she had won Pulitzers. But anyway, she made it to Arkansas, and she got to Little Rock, and she says, well, and I said, no, Dorothy, I'm not going to see you. She said, well, I'm going to drive up there anyway. So one day, the next day, I have a call from my gate, and it's her driver. And her driver says, Ms. Rabinowitz from the Wall Street Journal is here. And I said, I've told her that I'm not going to talk to her. I'm sorry that you're going to have to turn around and go home. She said, well, can she just come up and use the restroom? And I thought, well, yeah. So she came up and used the restroom and went back to Washington with a story. And it was done on the 19th of February of '99, and it was called Juanita Broaddrick Meets the Press. And then shortly thereafter is when NBC finally ran it. Okay, now I'll go back into being silent. For the next 17 years, I did the NBC Dateline thing. I was through with it. I told my story, and the media had a heyday with me, and I was everything but a respectful woman. Everything. So for 17 years, I said, I'm through. You can't get to them. You can't hurt the Clintons. On October the 15th, 2015, Hillary tweeted. And she tweeted, and I don't have it here, but I know what it said. It said that all victims of sexual abuse should be believed, and we're with you. And I saw that on television after 17 years, and after what this woman had done to me. I thought, my God, you cannot say that. There's no way in the world that you can say that. And I'm not going to let you say that. So I called my grandson, and I had him come over after school. He was 13, and to teach me how to use Twitter. This is where it came out, was on Twitter, and I thought, because I thought that I could do it, but then red numbers kept coming up and I couldn't. So he walked me through it. He never knew what I was going to tweet, but he walked me through it, and I thought, okay, I think I've got this. So on 1/6/16, I tweeted, I was 35 years old when Bill Clinton, the Arkansas Attorney General, raped me and Hillary tried to silence me. I'm now 73 and it never goes away. I typed that up and I thought, that looks fine. And I thought, I'll just tweet that. And I punched tweet, and within 30 seconds, all hell broke loose. And I had not said anything that I hadn't said 20 years previously. I had nothing. Everything was the very same. It's just it was worldwide and it was instant.
Yeah.
My phone started ringing off the wall, one reporter after another. And about the fourth call was my son, the attorney. And he says, Mom,
Mother.
what in the world did you do? And I said, I don't know. And I didn't. But from that moment on, you know, I was in it. I was in it for the duration. And so I knew I was not for Hillary. I mean, there's no way that I could ever support her and the first man. You know, there's just no way. But I wasn't real fond of Trump. It was like, if any of you ever saw the tweet from James Woods that says, Trump may be vinegar, but Hillary is arsenic. I thought, yeah, that's it. That'll help me get through this. And then from then on, I just love Trump, you know. And for so many years, I would never say the word rape. I would say sexual assault. It was too graphic. That word was just too graphic. And then if you'll remember, when Donald Trump in May of 2016 was on Sean Hannity's show, and the New York Times had just come out with this, all these pictures of these women that were supposed to have been sexually assaulted by Donald Trump. And Sean is talking to him and says, you know, are they going to talk to Juanita Broaddrick? Are they going to talk to Paula Jones? Is the New York Times going to talk to Kathleen Willey about indecent exposure, about groping? And at that moment, Sean said, and President Trump said, and rape. I almost fell out of the chair. I thought he was talking directly to me. So there it was, that horrible word in all of its awful glory. But it was the only thing that really described what happened to me. So I even been involved in Trump's campaign. In October of 2016, Kathleen Willey, Paula Jones, and I were asked to participate in a 2 or 3 day taping of interviews with us separately and with us together. And we did this in Washington at the old Watergate Hotel. And it was draining, and it was really hard to do, but we did it. And I think it was either on Facebook or whatever, but anyway, it was a very long, detailed interview with all of us. And then on the 8th, I was going back home to Arkansas, and I was on the plane. And my phone started ringing. I hadn't turned it off. And it was Steve Bannon's assistant, and he said, Juanita, we'd like to have you at the second debate tomorrow night. And I said, I'm headed to Arkansas. I'm on a plane. I'm going down a runway. And he said, well, think about it. I said, well, I'll call you when I get to Dallas. And I called my son, and he said, Mom, you shouldn't go. Did you hear that awful tape, that Hollywood Access tape and all that? And I said, yeah, and I think it's just locker room talk. You know, I do not, and that's when I tweeted. about 2 days prior to that, I tweeted, I said, actions speak louder than words. Bill Clinton raped me, Hillary threatened me, Donald Trump said bad words. I don't think there's any comparison. And Mr. Trump retweeted it. So that's sort of stuck. Yeah, he retweeted it. And so I told my son, you know, those are terrible things, but those are just words, Kevin. And I said, Mr. Trump has asked me to be at the second debate in one of the most public forums. We have been told to go back in the woodwork, go away. Bill Clinton is old news for years. And I said, it's time we come back out. So I got home about 1 o'clock in the morning and I left at 5 to go to St. Louis to the second debate. And the last thing they told me on the phone was, please go incognito. Don't let anybody know that who you are. And he said, there'll be a driver there with a sign that says Jane Morgan. And I said, okay. So I get in out of the airport at St. Louis and I walk up to this guy and I say, I'm Jane Morgan. And he says, sure you are, let's go. So they kept us hid all day long. They did not want anybody to know that we were there. And about 5 o'clock in the evening, they said, okay, we're going to take you to Mr. Trump's hotel so he can meet you all. Y'all can meet him. Went over there, had a lovely time. We met Melania and all the kids and Mr. Trump. And he was so kind, he was so soft-spoken, and he was so thankful to us for coming on such a short notice. So he went around, talked to all of us, and then Steve Bannon, standing over by the door, says, okay, let's come through here. So I thought we were leaving, going back down the service elevator that they brought us up on. So we walk in this room, and here's this long white table with a white tablecloth on it and 5 chairs. And Steve Bannon told us where to sit. We go and sit down, and I turned to Kathleen Willie. I said, are they going to feed us? Because we had no idea they were going to do a press conference. This was unknown to us. We had no idea. So, in a few minutes, Mr. Trump comes in, sits between us in the middle, and he waves to Steve Bannon and he says, let them in. And I turned to Kathleen Willie and I said, let who in? About that time, these double doors open. All of these cameras come in the door. And I mean, and then they see us and they stop like a deer in the headlights. And we had the same look. We did not know what was happening. And then Mr. Trump says, thank you for coming. They thought they were coming to talk to him. He says, thank you for coming. These nice ladies have something they'd like to say to you. And I thought, oh, oh, what'll I say? And then I remembered the tweet that he had retweeted. And then when it was over, we go to the debate. And as we walk in past Bill Clinton, do you all, and he had no idea we were there. She didn't either. Have you seen that picture of him with his eyes all bugged out? That's when we walked past him. It was a shock to him. And that was, and people say, well, you didn't know. He used you. And I said, no, he didn't. We knew what we were doing. And I'd do it all over again. I wouldn't have any, I think he's the most wonderful thing that's ever happened to our nation. And right now, what he's fighting from all the evil within the nation and within the government is just astronomical. And we all have to back him. We all have to give him our support in any way that we can. I think he is going to go down in history as one of the best presidents ever. Amen. I honestly do. The night of the election, I just knew she would win. But about, I think what was it, about 2:30 in the morning when it was Wisconsin and then Florida, and I thought, oh my God, it's really happening. The next day, I have never had such a weight lifted off of my shoulders that I wouldn't have to look at those two in the White House. And we all must really be proud of our president. If anybody would like to see a full story that was done by a liberal about me, it was done very, very well. His name is Leon Nafik. He is a reporter for Slow Burn for the liberal Slate magazine. He interviewed me last year for about 2 months and interviewed everybody around my case. And it was just outstanding. I've never seen such a total picture of everything that I went through and the reason why I should be believed. But anyway, it's the Clinton impeachment and it's Slow Burn, and it was done by Slate magazine. And the guy's name is Leon, Neyfakh. It was awesome. Just couldn't believe it. To be a liberal. Some liberals know the real truth. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Juanita,
Yes.
can you touch on when Hillary approached you the next day or so?
After I got home from the rape, I don't know how I even put one foot in front of the other. Prior to being raped by Bill Clinton, I worked in his campaign, and I arranged a fundraiser with my dear friends, Betty and Buddy Criswell. They owned a beautiful home in Van Buren, and I talked them into having the fundraiser at their home. He was my dentist, and she and I played tennis together. A lovely couple. After I get back home, I am devastated. I don't even think about this anymore. Until the day before the fundraiser, I had called the Little Rock office, and I said, my business is taking up too much time, and I can't volunteer anymore. And then I just forgot everything else. I just put one foot in front of the other and went to work every day. So the day before the fundraiser at the Criswell's house, Betty calls me, and that evening, and she said, do you have the list of the people who were wanting to contribute? And I said, oh my God, Betty, I completely forgot. I said, after work tomorrow, I'll run those up to you. And I said, I'm not volunteering anymore, I'm sorry, and I can't be at the fundraiser. So I go up there the next evening after I get through at my office. And it's about 6 o'clock in the evening. The fundraiser wasn't supposed to start until 7. And I'm there, I give the lady from the state a few checks that I had too that I found in my van to the Clinton campaign. And then I gave Betty the list of the people who wanted to donate that night. Then I'm about to leave. Well, the Clintons come in early. I see them coming through the back kitchen area. And as they come in, a friend of mine who drove them from the airport, in fact, I'm the one that had asked him to go pick them up at the airport and bring them to the Criswell home. He comes over to me, his name is Chuck Watts, and he was a local pharmacist and a good friend and a huge Clinton supporter. He did not know what had happened to me. And he comes over to me, he said, my gosh, he said, the conversation all the way from the airport was the Clintons asking me questions about you. And I just sort of froze. And I thought, I've got to get out of here. So I'm heading to the front door, and here comes Hillary, straight for me. And if you can believe this, as she came to me, I thought, here comes that poor woman.
The witch.
I'm serious. I didn't know what this woman was back then. She comes over to me, takes a hold of my hand, and she says, I just want you to know how appreciative Bill and I are for everything that you do in the campaign. And I could have nodded, I could have said thank you, I don't even remember. And I just had to, the door was getting closer, so I just wanted to get to the door. I didn't want to come in contact with him at all. So I go start for the door, and I feel somebody grab me from behind, and I thought it was one of my friends that are going to tell me goodbye. It was her. I turn around, and she has a death grip on my arm. And she pulls me down to her, and she looks me straight in the face with these cold eyes, and she says, "Do you understand everything you do?" And that's the first time I became frightened of that woman. That was before she had her henchmen to do her dirty work. She had to do it herself back in '78. And I left immediately. Yeah. Anybody else?
Juanita, since Trump has been inaugurated, have you received any contact from the Clintons since January of 17?
No, not from the Clintons. I tweet. I try to get their attention all the time. I tweet. And I don't know if he's going to pick back up his tour. You know, we had said I was going to do a documentary. We were going to start at the old Camelot in Little Rock, and I was going to do a documentary for American Mirror, Kyle Olsen. And we were going to follow them, and we made it public that we were going to do this when they had their evening with the Clintons. Whatever town they were in, we were going to play my documentary in a theater. And now we've not heard anything else about an evening with the Clintons. But can you believe that this man had the gall when Judy Woodruff asked him, well, what about all of these allegations and everything, Mr. Clinton, when he was on with James Patterson about his book, The President is Missing?
Yes.
And this jerk has the gall to say, you know, Judy, the norms have changed about what you can do to somebody against their will. And none of the liberal media picked that up. I mean, it's so blatant. The man is, there's no words for this. Yeah.
Actually, it's what I want to ask about. I really enjoyed your remarks. Thank you for being here. Two-part question. One, now that you've had 40 years to think about it, would you have done anything differently?
Question.
And the second part is, in the atmosphere that we have now, like what Bill Clinton said, you're seeing Democrats and progressives set standards that they can't meet with their behavior. And eventually the House will come tumbling down. What do you think the future looks like for the party now that they're not allowed to just freely rape and Weinstein women and staffers and things like that?
Yeah, there's nothing about me. There's nothing that I could have done differently for the time. You're talking about the 1970s, where everybody said men will be men, boys will be boys, just deal with it. And this was the Attorney General. There was no deal. I didn't, no one would have believed me. You know, even though I was a reputable businesswoman and a nurse, I was a woman in a man's world in the 70s. Yeah.
We're all pretty similar in our ideology here, from front to back of the room. Were you a very ideological or political person prior to that invite that your friend gave you to help participate in his campaign?
No, I had never done anything like that before. No. And people say, well, and I've been Democrats through the years too. I voted for Obama. Oh, please don't. The first time around, I voted for Obama. Probably gave his campaign $5,000 because I thought I'm not for a particular party until now. But I mean, I was. I voted for Bush. You know. Yes.
I just had a comment, not a question. You had spoken earlier about how all these evil people came out and were calling you horrible names and saying that Bill Clinton wouldn't touch you and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to, I'm watching you and I think you're absolutely beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
So
Thank you.
I
That's
just
so
wanted to
nice.
throw that out there and let you know that for every hater out there that wants to, name call and downgrade every woman who actually comes forward, that it's real, okay? Not that they're just saying that for political gain. But I've been watching you. I think you're a beautiful woman. So
Thank
I
you.
just want to let you know.
One of my biggest critics has always been Geraldo Rivera. And I love going against him on Twitter and showing those selfies that he took, those new selfies. I just hate that Sean has him on all the time, like he does. Yes.
How how do you feel about things like the pink pussy hat marches that kind of rally around Hillary Clinton losing, and they claim to be feminists, and yet their entire premise is that Hillary Clinton losing. There is no premise to actual feminism. It's just the fact that they lost. How does it make you feel that they rally around a woman who has not only threatened you, but threatened other women, left a young child being raped, pretty much like the most anti-woman woman in history?
I tell you what, I don't understand it. I don't understand how the people can tolerate her or be around her. And you know, when I've called their hands on it, like Alyssa Milano,
Yeah.
she had tweeted something, and I said, well, what do you, and she actually apologized to me. And so did another one. I think when you actually confront them with the situation, they know that Clinton's a bad guy. But it's not desirable for them to say so, you know, for their party. He's on his way out, if he isn't already.
We'd like
Well,
to think
first of
so.
all, I wanted to say somewhere along the line you felt your strength. What was it when Hillary tweeted? That was the day.
Oh, yeah. I was sitting on my couch at my house, you know, and thought, you know, I'm not getting involved in this. And she comes on TV, and I replay it. And I think, did she say what I think she said? And I replayed it again. And pardon the expression, but I shouted, "You bitch. You're not gonna do that." You know? And she is.
Now the other ladies, Paula and Kathleen, and now you're out here, you're educating and giving us a real story. Do the other ladies, do you still connect, and do they also speak so that people can?
No, they don't. Kathleen is not in real good health, even though she's just 72. She's not in real good health, and she was going through foreclosure on her home. But do you know what happened? There was a woman in California that sent her $100,000.
Wow.
And she was able to renegotiate her house loan and keep her little home that she had had all those years. So she's doing well, but not physically. Not physically. Paula, I never see anymore. You know, I saw her at the second debate, and then we've both been on Sean's program several times together. But I don't see them. You know, I mainly go around and talk about my book and things like that.
Well, thank you for doing it, because you're helping all of us as well.
Thank you, thank you. I think it's important. I think it's important
Very.
to not ever let him off the hook.
No.
Juanita,
Yes.
thank you for coming. I want to ask the questions a bit more personal.
Uh-huh.
Maybe, and it's going to go over a little bit of time. Looking at this class or this room, there's at least 5 victims of sexual assault or some type of rape in here, at least men and women. And every time you talk about this, are you finding it therapeutic? In other words, your coping mechanisms over time. When you were 35 years old, how did you cope with it? And then at 45 and 55 and so on to today, how's it changed over time? And where do you draw that strength?
I tell you what, I do not know unless it's from, I think, of course, I'm a Christian. And I've attended the Presbyterian Church most all of my life, and I draw strength from there. Even though my minister says, "Are you ready to forgive him?" I say no. And he can't ever, he says, "Well, one of these days." I said, "I don't know." Yeah, but I think from my church primarily. But I'll never know. I'll never know. And it could have been what I went through as a child with my mom. My mom was an abuser of my sister and I. And that's all in my book too. And she physically and emotionally abused us from the time we were tiny until I was 10 years old. I don't know if that prepared me or not, you know. I really don't know. But I think if anybody has an incident of sexual assault, whether it be a man or a woman, they're going to be dealing about it differently. But the main thing that they need to do is to remember the details. When you get home, the first thing is you want to be safe. You want to get out of that situation, do anything you can to get out of that situation. And then you want to write down everything in the world that you can remember. You want to save your clothes. But mine was so different because of who it was. You know, I'd have to get up and grab the remote every time that jerk would come on TV. It was terrible to have to see him prosper and do well.
How did you feel when you saw the blue dress? When you saw the blue dress, you must have been.
Oh yeah. But I'm disappointed in Monica. You know, I'm disappointed that she voted for Hillary after what Hillary did for her.
Wow.
And that she wants to paint herself as a victim. I know she was 22. And I know there's some type of a victimhood there because of who he was, you know, and the stature that he was. And I think she's sort of gotten off the road a little bit. But when I found out she voted for Hillary, that didn't make any sense. But I think she's doing good work.
Now, another question, if I may be so bold. That the experience that you've been through, even I get emotional about it.
Yeah.
But these people that make false accusations, these people like Palsy Ford and this young man in Chicago now. Here you are, you're trying to encourage people, get out there and say something, protect the evidence. How bad do those people hurt the real victims?
Oh, they do tremendously. And I remember within 2 or 3 days after Dr. Ford came out, I tweeted, I don't believe her. You know, you just had, and boy, did I get backlash. And I think it'll be proven someday that this woman is a huge liar. Yeah. If y'all do y'all follow my Twitter?
Yeah.
It's A. Tennis Nutter, just Juanita Broaddrick. I have a blast. I'm old and I can say what I want. Anybody else?
Just, isn't it amazing how one day can change your whole life?
Oh yeah.
You know, we all wake up every day and we think, you know, it's just another day. You know, just we do the same thing every day. We have our little routines. And you don't realize how one day can literally change the entire trajectory of your entire life.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And this was one morning.
Yeah.
This man at 8:30 in the morning raped me. None of it, and all of these things that I was telling you, a mother, a businesswoman, a nurse, I loved my patients. All of these things, I went to church, you know, all of these things that I did in the community, it just that one day,
You think that young man is really his son?
No,
No.
no, sorry,
No.
sorry.
Can you tell us about the media in general, or your standpoint coming from Arkansas, you know, somewhere?
I didn't hear him.
Can you tell us about the media, coming from somewhere as rural as Arkansas and coming, you know, up against the national media as?
Oh, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. When I was at that second debate, Kellyanne Conway says, "Come on, we're going to the spin room." Well, I didn't know what the spin room was after the debate and everything. And it's like a boxing ring. And you walk around the inside of the boxing ring, and here's every news people that you can imagine are around this thing. And not one of them said anything nice to me after the debate. It was all liberal, except for Sean Hannity there at one end. And they all would say, "Why did you say this? Why did you lie your first deposition?" Just anything they could do to downgrade me as I was walking around. And I just had a blast talking to him. I mean, I told him like it was. But the media local media, I've never been involved with, you know. It's always been national media. So I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, I did.
How did your friends that had given the parties at their house for their campaigning, when they found out what had happened to you?
Oh, they were devastated. But they didn't find out for years.
Right, but did they get back with you later and tell you?
Yeah, Buddy was my dentist for the next 20 years. Yeah. And he said, you know, and many times he would say, I'm so sorry, I never knew.
The thing that's really disturbing is that it was premeditated. He planned where you were gonna be.
I know. I know. That's,
Were there other people that?
he is so methodical in most everything he
You were
does.
drinking and it just happened, it was premeditated.
Right. And in 1991, when he apologized to me, even though I was so angry, you know, at the whole situation, that frightened me. In 91, I thought, I had thought about coming out, and then I thought, no, look what's happened to the other women. But then I go home, and this man's running for president, and he knew exactly where I was that day, at that time in my life. You know, that's what frightened me.
It's scary.
I wanted to ask, you know, since I know that October 2016 was like a very hard point, especially, you know, it was the October surprise. Did you get like any backlash from like, you know, the GOP or anyone from the party that when you went to support Trump when he was trying to weather the situation? Was there like anyone saying, I can't believe you did that, even though like from the past you
It was constant on the TV, on CNN and MSNBC. Can you believe he brought those women there? Oh my God, but it worked. Let me tell you, Steve Bannon knew what he was doing. Yeah. And now with Roger Stone in the news, I have to tell you something funny. You'll be the only ones that know this. But about, I'd say 8 or 9 months ago, I get a call from Steve Bannon, and he's in Japan. And he said, Juanita, he said, who asked you to come to the debate? And I said, well, your assistant, Richard. And he said, that's right. And he said, Roger Stone is saying that he's responsible for getting you there. But now Roger does this. You know, I like Roger. He's okay, but he just over the top sometimes. And so he said, I'm going to have a reporter call you, and you tell the reporter who brought you to the second debate. And I did, but I don't know why it was so important for them. These important guys just love to argue among themselves, but I thought that was funny. Yes.
Yeah, you might not have the answer to this, but I always wonder I wonder, like, why does Bill Clinton always get away with this, especially in the Me Too era? It seems like the most powerful men, Bill Cosby, etc., you know, that I never thought would get taken down or have been taken down, but yet nothing seems to touch him ever.
Okay.
And do you think it'll catch up with him?
Yes, I do. And there's two parts to this. You say Bill Cosby got brought down?
Yeah.
Bill Cosby's case had Andrea Constand. We don't have that.
Right.
We don't have somebody that Bill Clinton, a young woman, that Bill Clinton raped in the last 10 years that'll come forward and then we can sue the hell out of him.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have that. But they had that in the Bill Cosby case. Also, the Clintons' power runs deep. It affects every, you can't imagine the people that they've done for, given money to, lied for, and look what Hillary Clinton did as Secretary of State. They have dirtied so many lives that are still in Congress, in effect, still doing things. And they're protecting themselves. Now that's what I think. I really think that. I think that they have affected negatively so many lives.
It's interesting how many people that were involved in the Clinton circle that may have ruffled feathers either committed suicide or were found murdered.
Yeah.
You know, in connecting the dots, you can figure it out pretty quick.
Yeah, I guess it was during the NBC taping when I was doing that I had a security gate and everything put around my house. And I think that that's why I'm still alive, is because I did that interview and I've become so public since.
Do you have any protection, security protection?
Yes,
To this?
yes, I do. I have 2 men that protect me, and their name is Smith and Wesson.
That was good.
Yeah, I've always had a concealed gun permit. And when I was young, I would go shoot with my father. I would go hunting and we would shoot target shoot.
I just
I'm
wondered
good with
if,
the gun.
you know, or
Yeah.
if you did, or when you traveled. Or...
I just wish Bill Clinton would try to break it in.
You know, there's a Leslie Milwing.
Oh, yes.
I'm on with her now, and if people want to know, there's a current case in a sense. Leslie was assaulted by Bill, and she was a reporter. You know her very well. We've been trying to get her on the news. We set it up with several news agencies. They've all pulled the plug in the last couple months.
Yeah.
You know, so
Well,
you know, she's trying, and they're shutting her down.
she and I are talking about going to Linwood once he gets through the Capitol.
Good.
Yeah. He's talking about Leslie Milwee. Do you all know Leslie?
No.
Have you heard of her? She was from my area. She was a 19 going on 20-year-old TV reporter in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And she worked mainly on the Cuban crisis when we had all of the Cubans that were at Fort Chaffee and housed out there. Well, Bill Clinton would come up to see how the situation as governor was working. And he would follow her in the darkroom and sexually assault her and put his hands all over her. And she told her boss, and the only thing that happened the day she had an appointment with her boss at the TV station was just as she went in to sit down, Bill Clinton walked in the door. He had also told Bill Clinton, you know, that she had a complaint against him, and she never did, and she left town. But it's atrocious. If you'll look at her interviews on the internet, it's awful what he did to her. He would push her up against the wall. Awful. 19 years old. You know.
Please go.
So how many times total were you personally threatened, besides the one time that Hillary, came on to you and, held on to you? Were there any other times you were
No.
threatened?
Never.
No.
Never.
Okay. And then
No.
with that case we were just talking about, was that, with your case, it was premeditated by Bill, and then you're saying, I don't know the details about this case. Is this something that happened several times for this 19-year-old? Do you know anything else about that?
Who about?
Leslie?
Yes.
Leslie?
Yeah, she's very.
Oh yeah, she was.
It happened like several times, or just the?
Oh yeah, because she did not know what to do. She was.
She was 19.
You're talking 1980 when this happened. Yeah, and she was just a young reporter, and she would try to hide from him, but 3 different times he sexually assaulted her. There was not a rape, but he would push her up against the wall.
At work.
At work, while
They
she
knew the
was
door
in
was open.
developing the film for that evening show. She was on Aaron Klein. She's been on several shows.
Yeah. She's trying to get on the main street, but they haven't really decided to go.
But the things that he did, I mean, when he was a student, when he was a Rhodes Scholar to Eileen Wellstone, he raped her, but her husband would never let her come forward. Well, her husband now would never let her come forward. There's so many people out there. I'm just wishing someday they'll come out.
So, do you mind sharing how it was when your son really understood what happened and and how, was he already an adult when he found out, or was there something you had to do before that?
He was at Tulsa University in class as an 18-year-old. He knew that I hated Clinton, and a reporter calls him out to the payphone. You remember payphones? About the class, and said, "We understand your mother was raped by Bill Clinton." So that's one of the first times he actually really. What was really hard was telling my grandson, because here he was. He had helped me learn how to get on Twitter. He was on Twitter, so we had to sit him down that evening and say, "Hey, we need to talk to you."
How happy were you when Justice Kavanaugh was confirmed to the Supreme Court?
Thrilled. That woman should be put in jail just like Justice. That she got on in the Senate and testified was ridiculous. I mean, ridiculous. What she did to that man can never be undone. That's all.
Yes, any more questions or? All right, guys, thanks for coming tonight to hear Juanita. Yeah, I'm gonna take a picture. You go.
We also have some flyers. Asking please have to take one, take a photo.
Yeah. Well, can you record this? I'll get one.
Thank you, Brad. Oh, you're so welcome.
Yeah, I can take a picture of you guys. And then I take a selfie.
Oh,
are you gonna?
yeah. Yeah,
That's
you can. Oh, gotcha.
take a
Oh, are
couple.
you?
Yeah, I'll take a
Oh,
picture.
yeah.